I think right now Korea is facing this multifaceted, challenges, external as well as internal.
South Korea's economy contracted in the fourth quarter of 2025 compared to the previous quarter amid domestic and international economic uncertainties. Preliminary data from the Bank of Korea released Thursday show that the country's gross domestic product from January to March shrank by 0.2% on quarter, unchanged from an estimate in April. It marked a decline in GDP following 2 consecutive quarters of positive growth.
Okay, so it is something that has been circulating around these days. South Korea may actually collapse by 2026, some experts say. Yeah, you probably think I am nuts at first, right? Such as, how can a nation that has been this stronghold in technology, culture, and economy just succumb like that? Now, you might awaken all the figments of your imagination and reject it as some nutty conspiracy plot or outrageous clickbait, but let me run with this just a bit. I would like to deconstruct why it is not really a random forecast made out of thin air. Something deeper there is simmering just beneath the surface, and that can alter everything, not only in Korea, but in the entire region and even to the rest of the world.
Meanwhile, the South Korean economy remains vulnerable to persistent challenges, including sluggish spending and construction investment, but consumer sentiment appears to be improving. Our correspondent Moon Ji-young covers the economic assessment for July by the Finance Ministry.
Let us backtrack. The story of South Korea is actually one of the most inspirational in the whole planet. It was practically a ruined country after the Korean War. It now leads the world in technology, pop culture, and innovation after a few decades. Have you heard about Samsung or K-pop? These are only the coolest part of the iceberg. The difference between South Korea and other countries is that the former was ravaged by war but became one of the leadership economies in the world within a comparatively brief duration. It is quite impressive. However, here is the thing. In the recent past, things have been a little shaky. It is not just a hiccup, it is more of a beginning of the ground underneath to crack. What is happening then? I will take you through the most important factors which have got a few people believing that within only a few years, Korea might be in a serious crisis. And here is the spoiler, it is not only about money. It is politics, demographics, international drama, all sorts of things. On hearing of South Korea, you most likely would associate it with the booming economy, right? And on paper, it still looks not too bad. However, when you scratch below the surface, you would notice some red flags waving. Among the largest is the household debt. Koreans went into buying sprees as they have been borrowing money. I do not mean a small increase as before, but record levels. Individuals are trading in more amounts of debt than their salary can support. Just imagine that you have an increasing debt that you cannot afford to cover each month. That is a huge issue. Since when people are occupied to repay loans, they are likely to reduce expenditures, less shopping, fewer outings, investing in new businesses. That economic deceleration flows onto the entire economy. Their exports then. The economy of South Korea is export dependent, especially on tech products such as semiconductors and manufacturing products. However, it is getting harder. China is doing it at a very quick pace, and international trade conflicts are not doing China any favors. The semiconductor industry, which is almost the crown jewel of the tech world in Korea, has suffered due to problems on the supply chain in the last couple of years. Therefore, it is true that as the semiconductor industry continues to cling on, the rest of the industries are slowing down. The growth of the exports in general is slowing down. In addition to that, domestic demand, which is basically how much people are buying within Korea, is also quite weak. The increase in interest rates has made loans more costly, hence there is a low number of individuals and firms who desire to borrow and consume goods and services. The experts have now stated that it may grow by less than 1% in 2025. It is not a crash, but indeed an indication that not everything is as healthy as it appears. Now, this one is big. The old age population is rapidly growing in South Korea. It is now declared as a super age society, noting that over 20% of the population is age 65 and above. It is a huge matter. However, more troubling is the birth rate that remains as one of the lowest in the world of about 1.7 births per woman. To maintain a population at a steady state requires a quantity of 2.1 births per woman. Thus, it is not only Korea that is aging, but it is also shrinking. What does this imply about the economy? Well, less youth implies less labor. The working age will decline significantly in the next few years, and retirees who will require healthcare and pensions will continue to increase. That causes a massive burden on both social and government finance, and this is the killer part. The current pension and healthcare system of Korea does not suit such a transition, and this may cause them some big economic migraines. It is not a question of money only. This means that a declining labor force will have less people to innovate, produce goods, and employ with an aim of growing the economy. Moreover, the number of consumers in the market also decreases, and therefore there will be fewer customers to demand everything, including houses, food, entertainment, everything. It is as though the economic engine is short of gas. Okay, now coming to politics not only in Korea. The geopolitical scenario surrounding Korea is becoming increasingly complex day by day. To begin with, there is North Korea. We are familiar with the history, decades of tension, the occasional flare-ups, and the ever-threatening abrasion of war.
The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which has released an update on its growth forecast. It expects the global economy to expand by 2.9% this year. That's down from its previous forecast of 3.1% only 3 months ago. The group warns that Donald Trump's erratic trade policies and the uncertainty they create will slow down the economy, hitting the United States especially hard. Luke Traeger has the details.
Analysts believe that North Korea will continue with its aggressive behavior as it continues with the military provocations and has turned to aligning with Russia and China. Anything other than light escalation would plunge the economy and the security of Korea into a mess. Next, one can mention the wobbly relationship between the US and China. South Korea finds itself right in the midst of this international competition. The US is a key ally and security partner, whereas China is the biggest trading partner of Korea. Living such a relationship is no less than a tightrope walk. You can only afford one fall, and you might lose the equilibrium. There are complexities added to trade policies, military groupings, as well as tensions in the diplomatic arena. And Japan is not to be forgotten. The relations between Korea and Japan remain sensitive, considering the past affiliation and the recent political demonstration. Within Korea itself, divisions, ideological, generational, regional, and based on class, all increase the instability. The actor president brought up earlier this year how the nation is experiencing shadows of war and disunity, and that is no mere political rhetoric. Such instability does not help Korea to respond effectively to both domestic and international challenges. Talking about internal obstacles, the political landscape of Korea has been relatively chaotic as of late. Don't you recall that President Yoon Suk-yeol was impeached early 2025? This was a big thing. Since that time, the country experienced snap elections, drama in politics, and widening gaps among various groups of people. There is deeper anger by especially the young people over the opportunities to get jobs and inequality, not just in politics. Job availability among the youth is very low, and most of the young Koreans claim to have been left behind by the high-velocity economic changes. This anger is contributing to the widespread protests and social unrest, and thus proving even more difficult to enable the government to use its resources in addressing long-term solutions. Such political separations are hindering urgent reforms as well. Korea urgently requires the rectification of the pension system, labor market, and social nets to which an answer to demographic and economic issues can be given. Though without unity and trust, it is hard to have those reforms done. It is a case of attempting to navigate a large ship with various people tugging in the opposite direction to which the steering wheel should be. Yeah, South Korea is in a bad situation, and it can be a real turning point in 2026. However, the thing is that collapse is not a given. People in Korea have gone through hard times and rebounded upwards. The trick is enlightenment and activity. Provided that Korea is capable of adopting clever policies, establishing social agreement, and embracing its geopolitical issues in a measured way, there are still hopes that it could elude the unpleasant scenarios. It is not just doom and gloom, but some idea of what to expect in the future so that people become less helpless and ready to accept and adapt to things as they come and make positive changes. The history of South Korea is not complete. It is literally at a crossroad, and the decisions at this stage are going to define its future up to decades. And in case you like this video, make sure to smash that subscribe button to get more videos discussing major issues affecting the world. And I would like to know what you think. What should Korea do to prevent this crisis? Leave your ideas in the comments section below and fill this discussion